On a remote highway in rural Louisiana, six lawmen awaited Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow on the morning of May 23rd, 1934. When an infamous criminal duo arrived, the posse shot 130 bullets into their Ford V8. When we think of Bonnie and Clyde, we think of just gangsters, all hell bent for leather, shooting and killing people. But there's also another side to them. They were also a loving couple who liked to show off. These pictures were taken in Joplin, Missouri in 1934. By the early 1930s, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow were already two of the most notorious criminals in the United States. But in 1934, Bonnie and Clyde's death would cement the duo into true crime legend. They started out as two young kids from Texas, Bonnie as a waitress, Clyde as a laborer. But they soon got swept up into the thrill of the Public Enemy era, typified by gangsters like John Dillinger and Babyface Nelson. After meeting and falling in love, Bonnie and Clyde bounced from one town to the next, robbing banks, small businesses, and gas stations, and becoming media darlings in the press. Clyde was often portrayed as a rebellious gangster, and Bonnie was seen as his love-struck partner in crime. But the couple's infamy also made the police all the more determined to catch them. As the duo toured throughout the country from Texas to Minnesota, authorities worked tirelessly to track them down. Before long, the duo's crime spree came to a grisly end, worthy of two dramatic gangsters after Bonnie and Clyde died. Newspapers breathlessly covered their death just as they had covered their crimes. Soon Americans everywhere were gawking at the gruesome photos of their demise. But what led up to the bloody moment in the first place? Both Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow were born in Texas, Clyde in 1909 and Bonnie in 1910. At first glance, they seemed like an unlikely couple. Bonnie was known for being a good student who enjoyed writing poetry. Meanwhile, Clyde grew up in a poor family on a farm and was arrested for the first time in 1926 for failing to return a rental car. Nevertheless, it was love at first sight. When they met through a friend in 1930, Bonnie was already married to another man, but she quickly realized that she only had eyes for Clyde. Although Bonnie never officially divorced her husband, she remained devoted to Clyde, even when he went to prison. She waited for Clyde while he served a 2-year prison sentence, and even though he emerged from prison changed, one friend noted that Clyde went from a schoolboy to a rattlesnake. Bonnie stuck by his side. Soon after, their life of crime began in earnest. as the duo started committing several robberies together. But before long, Clyde Barrow's crimes began to escalate. After one of his accomplices killed a store owner in 1932, Clyde decided to go on the run, and he took Bonnie with him. In 1933, Bonnie and Clyde had become quite infamous for their crimes, alongside accomplices like his brother, Buck Barrow, and wife Blanche, especially after a shootout in Joplin, Missouri. And guys, I've been to the now it's now a bed and breakfast in Joplin, but I've been to the Bonnie and Clyde hideout. I've actually stayed the night there, and this was like several years ago. But and yes, that place is absolutely totally haunted. Left two police officers dead. A later investigation of the crime scene turned up a camera full of pictures of the couple, which swiftly ran in newspapers across the country. Papers like the New York Times described the duo in provocative terms. Clyde was a notorious Texas badman and murderer, and Bonnie was his cigar-smoking, quick-shooting woman accomplice. After 2 years on the run, Bonnie and Clyde had killed at least 13 people, and the authorities were hot on their trail. On the evening of May 21st, 1934, a posse of 6 police officers from Texas and Louisiana set up an ambush on a rural road in Beanville Parish, Louisiana. They were ready to take out Bonnie and Clyde for good. In the months leading up to the ambush, the authorities had heavily intensified their focus on the duo. Back in November 1933, a Dallas grand jury had issued a warrant for the arrest. One of the gang members, W.D. Jones, had been arrested in Dallas in September and had identified Bonnie and Clyde as the perpetrators of several crimes. And after the murder of a man in Texas a few months later, another warrant was issued. A farmer who claimed to have witnessed the murder said that Bonnie had held the gun and laughed as the man died. Although the witness may have exaggerated Bonnie's involvement, this changed the public's perception of her. Previously, she seemed primarily as a bystander. Unsurprisingly, the farmer's account made several headlines, and police in Texas offered a $1,000 reward for the pair's bodies, not their capture. And this is the posse that took him down. Now the police were ready to act. To kill the infamous couple, authorities trained their sights on a known accomplice of theirs named Henry Methvin. He had a family in Beanville Parish, and authorities suspected that Methvin, Bonnie, and Clyde would head to the Methvin house if they got separated. They enlisted Methvin's father, whom Bonnie and Clyde knew, to wait on the side of the road as bait. Then they waited and waited. Finally, around 9 a.m. on May 23rd, the police saw Clyde's stolen Ford V8 speeding down the road. Upon seeing Methvin's father parked on the side of the road, Bonnie and Clyde took the bait. They pulled over, presumably to ask him for help. Then, before they had time to get out of the car, the police officers opened fire. Clyde was killed instantly by a shot to the head. One of the officers recounted hearing Bonnie's scream as she realized he'd been hit. The police kept firing. They emptied their entire supply of ammunition into Bonnie and Clyde's car, firing 130 rounds in all. By the time the smoke cleared, Bonnie and Clyde were dead. Bonnie was 23 and Clyde was 24. The scene of Bonnie and Clyde's death quickly descended into chaos. Police struggled to beat back looters who were determined to snatch a souvenir. One man took a piece of Bonnie's blood-stained dress. Another tried to cut off Clyde's ear. By the time the authorities came to remove the bodies, there was a massive crowd of people around the corpses. Shortly after Bonnie and Clyde's death, the coroner stated that Bonnie had been shot 26 times and Clyde had been shot 17. However, some researchers have since claimed that they were actually shot more than 50 times each. The undertaker even reported that he had difficulty embalming the bodies due to the large number of bullet holes. Indeed, they had died so brutally that two jurors later became nauseated after looking at the photos of Bonnie and Clyde's death scene. In the aftermath, the police faced some criticism for not calling out a warning before they opened fire on the couple, but according to the officers that were determined not to give the pair a chance to escape or fire back at the lawmen, as two of the officers later stated, each of us 6 officers had a shotgun and an automatic rifle and pistols. We opened fire with the automatic rifles. They were emptied before the car got even with us. When we used the shotguns, there was smoke coming from the car, and it looked like it was on fire. After shooting the shotguns, we emptied the pistols at the car, which had passed us and ran into a ditch about 50 yards on down the road. It almost turned over. We kept shooting at the car even after it stopped. We weren't taking any chances. To that point, it certainly appeared that the two outlaws were prepared to defend themselves. After their death, police found multiple weapons inside their stolen car, including rifles, shotguns, revolvers, pistols, and 3,000 rounds of ammunition, and Bonnie died with a gun in her lap. In life, Bonnie and Clyde were inseparable, but in death, that was not the case. Though they had both expressed a desire to be buried together after they died, Bonnie's family would not allow it. Bonnie and Clyde were laid to rest in Dallas, Texas, but they were buried in separate cemeteries. However, the enduring legacy of Bonnie and Clyde's story binds them together for eternity. People remain enthralled by the criminal couple's story and the relationship, their violent crimes, and their bloody demise, and eerily, Bonnie and Clyde death photos continue to fascinate the public. In the aftermath of their death in 1934, Clyde's stolen Ford V8, often dubbed the Death Car, made its rounds across the country, riddled with bullet holes and bloodstains, and it was a popular tourist attraction displayed at fairs, amusement parks, and flea markets for almost 40 years, before it ultimately settled at Whiskey Pete's Hotel and Casino in Primm, Nevada. In 1967, the notorious duo got a fresh boost of celebrity thanks to the release of the Oscar-winning movie Bonnie and Clyde. In the film, the couple is glamorously depicted as by Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty. Most recently, in 2019, they were portrayed yet again in the Netflix movie The Highwaymen, proving that the public's fascination with Bonnie and Clyde hasn't faded, even though nearly a century has passed since they died. Today, Bonnie and Clyde's death scene is eerily quiet. A stone marker lays out the facts of the demise in bare bone detail. May 23rd of 1934, Clyde Barrows and Bonnie Parker were killed by law enforcement officials. It was just a sad ending. I mean, yes, I know that they were some of the world's worst, but when they weren't shooting at people or killing people, they were just two young kids in love. And I want to read you the poem that Bonnie Parker wrote, and it's so eerily similar to how they died. Let me pull it up. This is the poem that Bonnie Parker wrote. The story of Bonnie and Clyde. You have heard the story of Jesse James, of how he lived and died. If you if you still are in need of something to read, here is the story of Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde are the Barrow Gang. I'm sure you all have read how they rob and steal, and how those who squeal are usually found dying or dead. There are lots of untruths to their write-ups. They are not so merciless as that they hate all laws. The stool pigeons, spotters, and rats. If a policeman is killed in Dallas and they have no clue to guide, if they can't find a fiend, they just wipe the slate clean and hang it on Bonnie and Clyde. If they try to act like citizens and rent them a nice little flat, about a third night they are invited to fight by a submachine gun rat-a-tat-tat. A newsboy once said to his buddy, I wish old Clyde would get jumped. In these awful hard times, we'd make a few dimes if 5 or 6 cops would get bumped. They class them as cold-blooded killers. They say they are heartless and mean. But I say this with pride, that once I knew Clyde, that he was honest, upright, and clean. But the law fooled around, kept tracking him down, kept locking him up in a cell, till he said to me, I will never be free. So I will meet a few of them in hell. This road was so dimly lighted, there are no highway signs to guide. But they made up their minds, if the roads were all blind, they wouldn't give up till they died. The roads get dimmer and dimmer. Sometimes you can hardly see. Still, it's fight man to man, and all you do is can, and do all you can. For they know they can never be free. They don't think they are too tough or desperate. They know the law always wins. They have been shot at before, but they do not ignore. The death is the wage of sin. For heartbreak, some people have suffered. For weariness, some people have died. But it's okay. All in all, our troubles are small till we get like Bonnie and Clyde. Someday they will go down together, and they will be buried side by side. To a few, it means grief. To the law, it's relief. But it's death to Bonnie and Clyde. And what's interesting, she wrote that 2 days before they were gunned down on that lonely Louisiana road. So were they really monsters like we were told growing up, that they were vicious and brutal gangsters? Or were they just two young people in love when they weren't being chased by the cops? I hope you guys have a good night. This is True Crime Unleashed, and I'm out. Peace. Uh, while you're here, please leave a like and go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and let me know down in the comments on what you guys think about the Bonnie and Clyde story. I mean, yes, it was back in the early 30s, which the Great Depression was going on, but did they deserve to be just killed and open fired upon as soon as the law saw them, or did the law overstep its bounds of justice? Let me know.